Woohoo! By the way, did you notice that the sound system sounds a lot better? All right. Ph.D. elementary education from Arizona State University. Billie is an emeritus professor at Arizona State University, where she served as an administrator in the College of Education for over 25 years. Dr. Enz was a member of the Early Childhood Teaching and Research faculty. Dr. Enz is an expert in areas of family literacy, emergent literacy, and language acquisition, co-authoring 3 textbooks in this area. Since retiring, Dr. Enz has taught brain health courses for senior citizens who believe in the importance of continuous learning, and on the other end of the developmental continuum, she teaches early language and literacy class to newborns and their first-time moms for First Things First. Please give an extraordinary welcome to Dr. Billie Enz.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me come and speak today, and thank you again for getting that up. It's a lovely September day, and I am delighted to be here. How we're going to proceed today is I have a presentation, and in part of the presentation, I will be asking you to turn to a partner, a study buddy, a friend, to debrief some of the information that I've given you, and I will give you time to process and debrief out from that. So we will be interacting with each other, because I know if you talk about what you just learned, your retention rate goes up to about 85%. So I'm going to go for that. All right, today we're going to be talking about understanding and maintaining our memory systems and our health. All righty, let's see, is this going to work for me today? It did earlier. Let's see if it will do it now. Nope. Show me, because it's being reticent.
Just use the up down area.
Okay.
Well, now it's not presenting up there though. Okay, here we go. Start from the beginning. Now, yep, now we're good.
Just up and down here? Okay. Whew. Alrighty. Hello, no. It's still not doing it. Okay, either it does not like me, and that's possible.
Okay. So you may have to scroll.
Okay, I don't mind
and
scrolling.
also do that.
Okay. Alrighty, so quickly again, we're going to be talking about brain basics. You're going to have a handout on this, so that should, if you have any detailed questions, follow up with that. We're going to be talking about our multiple memory systems and how they work together. We're also going to be talking about the normally aging brain versus when we begin to see signs of dementia. And then we're going to be talking about what you can actively do to maintain your cognitive health. You have a lot more control than you may think. All right, how do we know the information about the brain that we know? Well, since the 1990s in particular, we have developed a lot of technologies that have helped us to understand. Where's that going? Ah! Here. It's interesting. It's showing one thing on the screen and another thing to you guys. So I'm going. I know, I hate when that happens. No kidding. All right. We're going to go back up. All right, so here we go. So we can take information from very simply by putting, and we use this a lot with tiny infants to collect information on their brains and electroencephalogram. And then we also have on the top corner the white thing that looks like a hairdryer gone crazy, okay? That is called a MEG. A MEG is a functional MRI, but it is silent. so we can use it with infants, toddler, preschoolers without scaring them to death. And then, of course, what you see is the MRI. I bet many of you have had an MRI. You know how loud and intrusive they can be. All right, so what that has told us is that there are multiple ways that we can interpret our brain. And the first and easiest way to understand it is that we have two hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. And we are crisscross applesauce. The right hemisphere controls the left side of our body and vice versa. The right side of our hemisphere is for gestalt. It develops a little bit faster than the left side of our hemisphere. We are, in this one, we get more likely to see things creatively. That when we hear music that is beautiful, that is the side of the brain that will begin to light first, okay? It is through that side that we begin to see things dimensionally, all right? The left hemisphere develops slightly slower, and it is here where we process most of the language, okay? Most of our language are mathematical reasoning skill. When people are really good musically, that side of the brain is being used extensively. What we have also here is, okay, do you see there is a little arrow there? You have the two sides of the hemispheres talk together through a thing called the corpus callosum, and it is fibers, thick fibers that connect the two hemispheres together. All right, this has always been fascinating to me. Gentlemen, your brains are slightly larger than female brains. That is because you are slightly larger than us proportionately. Ladies, our corpus callosums are like 3 to 4 times thicker than theirs. That means we process information much more rapidly. Yeah, so much for your bigger brain. All right. When our brains develop, they develop from, this is multiple lobes. We have also multiple lobes. The lobes are on both sides of the hemisphere. So you have 2 parietal lobes, 2 occipital lobes, and they start from the bottom up. And as you take a look at it, our brainstem, it is the first thing that has to develop before we can sustain independent life. And right now we know that most brainstems in infants are developed roughly at about 24 to 26 weeks. Okay, so if an infant is born at that time with a great deal of medical intervention, yes, we can probably sustain that life. Probably. Okay, probably. A lot of medical intervention. The next thing that develops is our cerebellum. That means little brain. And for a long time, we weren't for sure what that did. And we said, okay, it's for balance, because when something was wrong with it, we tended to be off kilter, okay? But as I'll tell you, now we know that the little brain serves in many ways as a replication of what's going on in the larger brain. All right, moving straight ahead, occipital lobe. Occipital lobe is where we process visual information. That is the part of the brain that develops the most rapidly after birth, okay, because it needs light to develop. And guess what? In utero, it's pretty dark, okay, very dark. And so when babies are born, they have less than 10% of their neurons are connected there. But by the time they're 4 months, 90% of their visual cortex is complete, okay? Meaning that roughly at 4 months of age, they have nigh on to adult vision. All right, what does that mean? It means that it changed the way that we treated children who were born with visual impediments. So if they had some kind of a muscular problem or a cataract, We used to wait till they were 6 months of age before we did anything, okay? Now we do it within the first 4 to 5 days of life, okay? Because if we don't do it, the problem will persist. They'll never have vision that they could have had. Moving ahead, we have our parietal lobe. Our parietal lobe is where most of our sensory information is processed and organized. So all of your sensory information coming in, especially your world of touch, okay, is coming in here. And it's where that information is organized. As you move ahead on your left side, if you will take your hand and put it on your left side right by your ear, you will feel a bump, kind of a lift and a bump, okay? That is your temporal lobe, and right underneath that bump, don't panic if you don't have it, I bet you I can find it. That is our Broca and Wernicke's components of our brain, which allow us to perceive, make sense of, and express language. All right, that actually begins quite early. By about 26 weeks in utero, it is in place. All of the systems are go, and the amniotic fluid is amazing at transferring auditory information and vibrations, okay? So infants are hearing language at that very early state, and what we know is that 4 weeks later, if we expose them to another language, they recognize it's different than their mother's tongue, okay? And how do we know that? Well, we watch, we can ultrasound, incredible what we can see now. Especially with the 4D ultrasound, we can see all facial expressions, we can watch them do what they do. We can watch them when we stimulate them with different stimuli. But what we watch, and we look at their little heart rate, when they hear a language different than what they're used to hearing, okay, their little heart rate speeds up because it's novelty. It's something different, and they're getting ready to anticipate it, okay? So we know that they are in a high learning mode. So if you want to help them adjust to the world, talk to them while in utero, okay? And by the way, kids who hear 2 languages in utero are what we call native bilinguals, okay? Because they come out with the path, the pattern, and the rhythms of both languages at birth. Yeah. All right, and then we have our frontal executive lobe, frontal cortex, and in that, that is slow to develop. It is what enables us to, if then that. If I do this, I can predict that this should happen, all righty? Logical choices, moral reasoning is here, all righty? It is remarkably slow to develop. It is not done until we are roughly, as human beings, 25 years of age, okay? It is not fully functional until we are, you know, and if you want to know how they figured that out, well, they looked at the actuarial tables for car driving, okay? And when can you rent a car, guys? Uh-huh. And they made that determination in the 50s, okay? And now science has caught up with that, all right? And yes, there is a gender difference, okay? When we MRI and functional MRI young women, it's usually done between 22 and 23. With young men, it's typical not till 26, 27, so we come across 25 as the average. Okay, so that is like, okay. It's always interesting when we find out things that match what we think we should know. And here again is our cerebellum. And our cerebellum, I'm going back to that because when people, how many of you know someone who has dementia? Okay, And the numbers would suggest to us that nearly all of us, before we leave this earth, will have experience with someone who has dementia. If not ourselves, then someone that we love. Okay, that's what the rates are at this current time. The slowest part of our brain, because it was the first to begin to develop, okay, power, whoa. Since it was the first to begin to develop, it is the last to come off, all right? So these are the things: your motor control, your balance, your ability to do sewing, typing, anything, word processing, your phones, cognitive process, attention, working memory also resides within your small little cerebellum, your emotional regulation, okay? Your ability to self-soothe and calm also comes, there is a replicant. We have two places in our brain that happens. Cerebellum is one of them. Learning and adaptation, especially motor control, okay? So getting in and out of the car. My granddaughter has a Jeep, and getting in the Jeep for me was like, I'm sitting here, and she goes, gee, you just kind of lift your butt in. And I go, I can lift, but my butt's not going. And so she said, there are ways. And I thought, show me, little girl. And she's like this much shorter than me. And she goes, floop. And I'm going, got a lot of learning. And language processing, comprehension support. So our cerebellum, even when other parts of our brain are beginning to detach and not function as well if we have dementia, cerebellum tries to hold it into place for as long as possible. All right. Now, looking deep inside the memory system, inside your brain, if this is your brain, here's your brain stem, here's your brain, here's the front executive part. The part in the middle is your limbic system. And it deals with a number of things that have to do with memory and sensory integration, okay, and how much energy to give a provoking stimuli. All righty, we'll talk about them real quick. Here's your amygdala. Your amygdala actually walks into a room before you do. It sets roughly, if we were to look at it, sets behind your eyeballs, all right? And it is sensing the environment to find out, am I safe here? Is this a good place to be, all right? And it allows, if it is not, your heart rate will go up, so it's triggering the other systems in the limbic system to get you ready to do a couple things. Do you fight? Do you fly? Okay. Do you freeze? Remember, that's an option as well, right? So your amygdala is in constant scan. And in fact, every 7 seconds, your brain, your amygdala does this to make sure you're still safe here. You're not aware of it for the most part unless you're, for some reason, suddenly not safe here, okay? What we see now in schools is children who never feel safe anywhere. They've been hyper-triggered, growing up in unsafe environments and unpredictable environments, and they never, no matter what's going on in their environment, these children are like, I can't learn. And literally, unless your amygdala is quiet, your ability to learn has been hampered significantly. All right. We also have our thalamus, and our thalamus is our sensory gateway. So all of the sensory information that is flooding in from all of your sensory systems is taken in at this one point in the center of your brain, which makes sense, doesn't it? So it comes in and it decides, along with your amygdala, where do I distribute energy? Okay, What do I pay attention to? Because in this room right now, there's air conditioning that's going on. Do you feel it? Do you hear it? Okay. There's some light noise happening above you. All right. So it's trying to, for some people, they can't sort out what to pay attention to and what to ignore. Okay. So when you hear them say the world is too much with me, that's part of what's happening. Okay. So in a good, healthy system, we ignore the things we don't need to pay attention to so we can focus on the things we have to pay attention to. Alrighty, and here's our little old hippocampus. And our hippocampus is where we process all further and future memories. Alrighty, I'm going to have you turn to your study buddy and tell them one thing you learned in the last 15 minutes. Start talking now, I'll ring you back. Chat, chat, chat. Would you pass that out in a minute? Wait. Sorry. 1 minute. And hush, fell over the room. All right, what was one thing that you learned from your neighbor? Or you told her?
I told her, actually.
Okay. Thank
That the thalamus, right?
Thalamus, yes.
That it's not, it's the sensory, and I thought at first that maybe it was just the nervous system, but I think it's other sensory stuff as well. And I have studied the brain a lot. I did cranial unwinding and massage therapy.
Good.
But it's also a question to you too. I just thought of this. Is that what like the Asperger or autism spectrum is? It's just an underactive thalamus?
It could be an underactive or overactive.
Overactive, yeah.
Remember, it's on that continuum is a lot of syndromes, okay? And we have some kids who are totally unresponsive to their environment. You know, they just hypo-responsive. And then we have those that are hyper-responsive, over-responsive to that environment. And along that continuum, you know, and as any kid who has autism will tell you, if you know one, you know one. They're all unique. Okay. In the back, does someone have something to contribute in the back? Anything?
I reminded my dad that my corpus callosum is thicker than his.
Hey, girl. No kidding. All right. Now I'm going to ask my husband to distribute some wonderful candy. If you'll take one and hold it. Okay, I'm testing your executive function. Okay. All right. What we have is multiple memory systems. And the first memory system we're going to be talking about is our sensory memory systems. And you know what those all are: your touch, your taste, your smell, your vision, your auditory capacities, all 5 of those. And as we're beginning to learn more, what we realize is in between each of those is sort of an interconnected path. So there is a suggestion right now that instead of having 5, distinct modalities, we may have as many as 25 as these guys interconnect together, okay? So, science is never complete. We're always in process. We're always learning. The next sensory or memory system we have is the working or short-term memory. We're going to be playing with that. And then we have our long-term memories, and there are multiple long-term memories that we will be talking about. Okay, now, one of the most powerful sensory system that we have is our sense of smell, and it is married almost completely with our sense of taste. And if you happen to have a candy right now, I want you to, if you choose to, indulge yourself. Go for it. Smell it. Look at it. Taste it. Touch it. Smell, smell, smell it. Okay, now we have what is called the Proust effect, where because our sense of smell at one time was so essential to our sustained life existence here on planet Earth, it has the ability to override any other, it overrides your thalamus. It is the only sense that can do it. So if, for instance, you're in the wilderness and you have encountered a skunk, how many of you have had the joy of smelling a skunk? Isn't it just awful? Okay, and skunks want you to feel that way because for the most part, they are, with the exception of their stink, they are defenseless little critters, okay? They don't have nails much longer than kittens, okay? They are very kitten-ish in behavior, okay? So their sense of smell is their only defense mechanism. So they want you to be sure you know, okay? And it works really well because anytime, my daughter at one time lived on our farm in Kansas, and she had two big dogs, and they were very friendly dogs who were once city dogs, and they had their first encounter with a skunk. Oh my God. And I mean, I don't know how much tomato juice they used to get rid of it. It was just, all right. But anyhow, those poor dogs were like traumatized. And so you had to say, I've never done that. And so anytime they smelled a skunk in the vicinity, they would run under the bed. I mean, they just said, that's it, we're done. I'm not getting near this thing. All right, well, they just had a magnificent experience with the Proust effect, a real powerful emotional impact. It went past their, let me think about it, to, oh my God, that's a skunk, we're gonna get out of the way. All right, how many of you have experienced cinnamon rolls? Mm-hmm. How many of you have been in a mall? And Cinnabon is, it is the only store I know that blows air out into the mall. And it does so for a reason, because this is how they get people to come in, Cinnabon. All right, because it most of the time reminds us of something very powerfully pleasant, okay? Takes me back to my grandma. My grandma was a cook in the kitchen, a baker in the kitchen at an elementary school in my Kiowa hometown. And she would make these for us on the weekends. So I cannot, when I'm in the mall and I smell that, my grandma stands right beside me, okay? Powerful impact. And then my grandpa smoked cherry tobacco in his pipe, okay? So whenever I smell that, which isn't very frequently anymore, but I hear Grandpa Bill, and he would always take his pipe and hit it on his pipe stand to loosen up his pipe grounds or whatever those are, to tamp it full more. So, I mean, I can hear him, I can feel him. Okay, that is a very powerful sense, which can take you from the now to the long ago. Okay, so your brain in one aspect is a time machine. It can go backwards in time, and we are perpetually projecting forward in time. So back in time, forward in time. But the sense that can take us back in time the fastest is our sense of smell. All right. And so what does that mean? How do we use that? Well, what we know now is one of the earliest tests that we're able to use to detect Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia is the loss of a sense of smell. So as you were eating your peanut butter cup, and that one had jelly in it, so peanut butter, jelly. All right, you were probably taking a mind trip back to the last time you had peanut butter or the first time you had peanut butter. Chocolate is another one of those essential tastes and smells that if we lose the ability to taste and smell that, we need to get our little selves in to have a doctor do an analysis for us, okay? This is now a formalized test called the peanut butter test. 10 years ago, it was just one of those hypotheticals, let's try it. Now it's being used to be an early diagnosis because it's non-invasive, okay, and it's cheap. All right. Coffee is one of those things. If you lose the ability to smell coffee, here's another thing. What we've realized is that sometimes people get so busy in their life that we forget to savor our sense of smell, okay? All right. So one of the things, what was it? Stop and smell the roses. It's actually good for your cognitive health, okay? And more than just appreciate your environment, it's give that sense a little workout, okay? Now I read that and I thought, oh, I am not doing that. So I was making our coffee the other day, and my hubby had got some beautiful, wonderful, aromatic coffee, and I opened it and I went, and apparently I got it right up in my head. So be gentle. All righty. Working memory. Working memory allows us to do multiple things. It allows us to manipulate information. If I said 1 + 1 is, -1 is, all right? So you are able to do that because you know that, but you are able to do some gymnastics with your memory, all right? It enables us to focus attention, okay, to become able and receptive to learn. That is also a very powerful executive function. So when we start having difficulties with short-term or working memory, we also begin to get anxious about what's happening inside there. All right, as we move ourselves ahead, I am going to ask you to put your pencils down. If you've got pencils, put them down. I just want you to focus on the screen because I'm going to ask you to recall this group of numbers. Okay? All righty. On your mark, get set. Recall them. I think you did pretty well. I heard a lot of them, especially the first 4. Give yourselves a high five. Woo! All right. Good job. Now, when a teacher sees her students have done very well, what does she do? I give them stars, but I make it harder. You ready? On your mark, get set. Okay, so yeah, I got some of it. You ready to see? Most of you got the 521. And when you said, I give up, yeah, alrighty. So, like, what's the big difference here? You did so well in the first one, guys. Oh. Well, it's because our capacity to learn isolated bits of information is limited to 7 plus or minus 2. Okay? And it is developmental. All right? So, if we've got a 1-year-old up to 3 years old, 1 to age 3, they can typically remember 1 bit of information. Okay. Bree, go get your ball. Okay. And she can run and go get her ball. And probably she could do that as soon as she is able to toddle over to pick it up. She can do that because remember, the little factoid here, by the time they're 6 months of age, they're hearing isolated words. The word boundaries are coming into place. And by the time they're 12 months of age, most children have 200 words, vocabulary words. They cannot say them, but they know them, okay? So they know their nouns, they know their things, they know their objects, they know their places, all right? So we can say to someone who's toddling, go find your shoes, all right? But I can't say, go find your shoes, put them away in the closet, and then come back out for mom. Three bits of information, the kid's going to go. You'll either get the shoes or they'll just stand there going, hi, Mom. So, and it goes all the way up. Now, here is what I find interesting, almost tragic, actually. When you look at the 15-year-old, okay, it's at 15 that we have the greatest ability to hold isolated bits of information, okay? So we have, all 7 bits of information is super easy for a teenager. And you're going, how did that happen? No. And as we get older, we lose some of our bits, okay? But nearly not as much as you would think. And after age 65, it depends pretty much heavily on how much medication you're taking, how much exercise you're getting, what your nutrition is, all of those things that your doctor keeps telling you about. All right, so how do we remember phone numbers? Because they're 10, okay? All right, we chunk it. All right, so 480 says, I live in the East Valley. If you're ASU, if you know this prefix, I'm at the Tempe campus, that's the 965 prefix. And so all I have to do is to know the last 4 digits, okay? And I know this because it's, see the 28 in the middle? I was born on the 28th, my hubby was born on the 28th, my daughter was born on the 28th, and I just have to stick 2 4s, beginning and the end. And then one of my doctoral students go, that's a lot of work. You just take 42 and times it by 2. And I went, oh. All righty. So I'm going to test you for your working memory. Do not write this down. I'm going to give you 3 words. In a few moments, I will ask you to recall it. All right, off. Now, the difference between long-term memory and short-term memory, and here's Mr. Duck, who hears this music on the radio and goes, oh, I love that song, I love that song. I remember all the words to that song. Ever happened to you? I love that song. And he goes, I'm going to go get that. Yeah. And so in lies the difference. We can, and most of us do have, hundreds of songs in our repertoire. And do you know where they hang out? In your cerebellum. Pet your little cerebellum back here. That's when you recall a song, Okay, you can have kind of a Proust effect there too. Okay, like, oh, this was a song that I heard when I was kissing my husband for the first time. All right, and all the words come back, and it's just emotional. All righty, that's that cerebellum long term. All righty. Now, we're going to be talking about our long-term memory, and the first one we're going to talk about is the episodic memory. Hello. There we go. Episodic memory is our earliest memories, okay? And it's our life memories. It is the story of our life, all right? So it's what's happened to us from early childhood forward. Now, we have an interesting phenomena called infant amnesia, all righty? Many of us don't recall anything before age 3 or 4. All right. Now, if you were to ask a 2 or 3-year-old, what did you do yesterday? They wouldn't go. They would go, oh, we went to the zoo and we did this and we did that. But unless you took a picture of it, okay, later on, like 6 months later, they couldn't have recalled it. Lots of feelings as to why this happened. Part of it is that your memories and your words are tied together. Your words are how you recall and label people, places, things, feelings. Okay? So if you don't have a lot of words at that age, you're less likely to be able to recall it. Okay? Another feature is how much did your family talk to you about that event? If an event happened in your house and it's like, oh yeah, it happened, no conversation, no retention of information, okay? So those are the two big things. What you're seeing here is Billie, big sister, with her baby sister, Bobby, okay? Earliest memory, we are 2 years apart. My earliest remembrance is when I was sitting on the front porch swing in Burlington, Oklahoma, with my grandma, and it was hotter than Hades outside, and she was anxious, and we were rocking on the front porch swing, and my dad came driving up like a bat out of hell and got out of the car and said, "It's a girl," announcing my sister's birth, okay? So years later, I said to my dad, this is what I remember. He said, yeah, that happened, okay? And he looked at me, he goes, you're not supposed to be able to remember that. My dad I followed my dad's career pretty much down the path. He was a professor of education at ASU, and I had his director's job, his associate's dean's job, the whole, So he goes, but you weren't supposed to be able to remember that. And I said, but I did. All right. So emotionally laden moments can be recalled, okay, or suppressed. All right. So depending on positive emotion, negative emotion. Okay. Emotional first, episodic emotional first. If you have a strong emotion with that memory, it is like that memory has been weighted. It's been given extra. All right. So as silly as this sounds, your first lost tooth is a big deal. Okay. You may not remember it, but I can tell you, if I said to a 10-year-old, do you remember losing your first tooth? They go, oh yeah. They can tell you where they were, when they were, how they took it home, if they swallowed it, if they lost it. I mean, it was a big deal. All right, first kiss. Do you all remember that? Your engagement, your wedding, your first job interview, your children's birth, all of those emotional memories are heavy and they stick for the most part. All right. Do you remember those 3 words? Okay, tell your neighbor. How did you do? Uh, Good job. All right, your next working system is your semantic. This is what you learn in school. This is what you're learning today. Is your semantic? Okay, what is that? Where is it located? Okay, who designed it? And someone said Las Vegas. Okay. Where was it built? Who built it? When and what is it? All those things you learned at school. Now, if you have gone to Paris and have had an opportunity to visit the Eiffel Tower, you have deeper memories. You have concrete, okay, semantic memories for it. All right. My niece got engaged there. So she has a whole world of memories located around this. Who is this? Yeah, and all these things that you probably know the answer to, right? Yeah, and you're going, oh my God, how come I know all the answers to those questions? Yeah, it's called, it's our culture. hmm And, we know things about people. That's the social nature of us, all right? And and I bet you 20 years from now, if I'm still here, I could put that very same slide up, okay? And people would still know, oh yeah, because he's got movies. You go down the aisle and you pick out his popcorn and his dressing, all those things. Oh, yep. And so it is interesting. Now, I could really confound you and put up what who is that the latest thing my granddaughter, um, my oldest one, 24, is a graphic designer, film producer type thing, and she knows all the latest anime. And there is one out right now where it's singing. The girls are singing in their power. Yes, and oh my God, I could put that up there, and I'd look at it and go, what is that? But they would all go, oh yeah, this is this. So culture evolves and changes. So what is semantic knowledge to us now may not be later. Alrighty, moving ahead, I'm going to take us to procedural memory. Procedural memory is all the things that were really hard to learn to do, and then you learn to do them, and now you don't know how you do them. Okay? How many of you can ride a bicycle? Okay. Do you remember falling off your bicycle? Okay. I had training wheels for a long time, and then my dad took off one training wheel, and then he took off both, and then I thought I was the coolest creature on the face of the planet. Okay? But it took a while to get stable on there. I could get on a bike now and probably not kill myself, all right? So it's, all right, do you remember typing class or word processing class? I hated that teacher. I just hated that class because I felt like such a failure. Everybody was faster than I am, but I have typed, more than 12 books and dozens of articles without ever looking down. Okay, so I guess thank you, typing teacher. Driving. Sitting next to your mom or your dad. They're clinging to the seat. Yeah. And now sometimes you get to places and you go, how did I get here? That's scary. All right. And people who are musicians work so hard to become competent players. My grandson Robbie is a professional jazz guitarist, and he can hear music and reproduce it almost in the same breath. All right, yeah. His brain processes music incredibly well, okay? And all of those little sweetheart talents that you have, first started out in your motor workout, your motor strip goes across your brain like a headband. And you have a motor strip, and then before that one, you have what's called a premotor strip. Your premotor strip is making the mathematical calculations so you don't trip and fall, okay? Your motor strip is enacting those calculations. And after you've learned to do something very well, it doesn't live in your motor strip anymore. It moves itself down to, where did we talk about? Our sweet little cerebellum back here? That's where it resides now. Alrighty, so if we want to keep ourselves challenged, okay, and procedurally tactile and aware, we need to continue to play with new toys, okay? And some of the newest toys around are the phones, okay? And I swear to God, if they update my phone one more time, it's like, no, don't do this. I won't know where you put it. All right. And then, of course, all the new technologies. And we certainly got challenged during the pandemic, didn't we? To switch to new technologies. All right. And the last one, which is probably the sneakiest one, and the one that gets us into the most trouble as a culture, and that has to do with our abilities, our emotional conditioning, okay? Remember our amygdala that goes into the room before we do? Okay, its job is to make sure we're safe. All right, and one of the first things it scans for is the familiar, all right? Do the people in the room look like me? Do they talk like me? Do they smell like me? Are they dressed like me? Okay, it takes your brain less than a second to make those tick, 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 tick. It's doing that. And if you think you don't do it, stand in line behind someone at the grocery store who's taking forever, okay? And you're giving the gal coupons, okay? And you're standing there and you're going, it's hot outside, I've got ice cream, and all of a sudden you begin to make assumptions about the person in front of you. It is a survival mechanism, okay? Anything that doesn't move like us, we are suspicious of, okay? That puts snakes, and nobody was really frightened before Jaws, okay? But now we have, a global obsession with sharks, and spiders were never anyone's best friend, so maybe Charlotte, but that was it. All right, so if you get overwhelmed, what we call it is an amygdala hijacking. And you see instances where the amygdala has won. When you see it, a road rage incident, okay? You see it with Karens, in Walgreens. I saw one about 8 months ago, and it was something, okay? And she really looked like the stereotypical Karen, that real severe haircut, and she had this, and she was having a hissy fit at this poor kid behind the counter, and she couldn't find something, and she just started to throw things, and you're going, okay, and the early childhood teacher in me wanted to go, okay, because I thought, you're an adult and you're acting like you're having a toddler tantrum, And basically, and everyone around me did the same thing, and we all just glared. And then all of a sudden, Karen went. Somehow that energy, that disapproval energy, entered her psyche and sucked her dry. And you're going, how can we magnify this to a global stage, Good old Karens. Okay. talk to your neighbor about something you learned in the last 10 minutes, and we are coming into the last quarter of what we're talking about. You have 2 minutes to talk. Okay. If you can hear my voice, clap 3 times. If you can hear my voice, clap 5 times. Thank you. All right, we're going to move ahead. And what we have is as we age, certain things, in fact, all things shrink. Okay? I used to be 5, 6 and a half. Okay? I did. I used to be 5, 6 and a half. I am now 5, 5. Barely. Yeah. And you're going, how did that happen? You know, it's the compression, all that other stuff. And you're going, well, it happens to your brain too. Okay? We just shrink. And roughly starting at age 35, we get to a certain point and then we go, okay, it tilts downward. All right, now we have what is called normal cognitively decline or just normal aging, okay? No problems. It happens. Our brain gets slightly smaller. But then we have things that is not the normal decline, and we see an accelerated curve downward. And now we begin to talk about the dementias, the multiple dementias. For a while in the 80s, we thought that dementia was everyone's outcome. Okay, that's really good news, isn't it? Now we know that's not true. All right, so when we take a look, and this is CAT scan, normal, and that you'd probably be looking at someone who's in their 40s in that first picture. You have mild cognitive impairment, and towards the center of the brain, you begin to see a darker cast, okay? And then you have full-blown dementia. And this person, in this particular case, was a 75-year-old, okay? And this is someone who had dementia, was diagnosed when they were in their 60s. Okay. All right. But here's some interesting things. Here's another way of looking at it. You're looking at the 2 sides of the brain. You're looking at the neural connections between all of your brain cells and how they become fewer and further between. That's another way of looking at the impact of dementia. All right, there are multiple dementias, and you can have more than one kind at a time. Here's where a little story background here. Alzheimer's is the most prevalent dementia, roughly 60%. All of it is characterized by plaques and clumps at the end tips of your neural connectors, okay? So they don't function efficiently. They don't communicate like they used to. And we see typically impairments in memory. They don't remember certain things, language. They are constantly searching for words, constantly. That's the underlining thing. And they have some visual impairments. You begin to see a loss of balance a lot of the time. Moving ahead, vascular dementia, a much 10 to 20%. What's happening is the blood vessels in the brain are beginning to wither and die. Okay, my mother-in-law had that particular dementia. Then we have frontal temporal dementia. Bruce Willis has that particular one right now. And in that one, you begin to see a lot of personality changes and a loss of language. Almost, in his case, almost a total loss of language. One of our dance teachers, Carolyn, her mother is my age, I'm 72, and her mom just died this summer of this particular dementia. My daddy had Lewy body dementia, and he didn't show symptoms of it until he was 83, but he had probably had it for a decade before. And he died at 86. And when he had it, he would have visual and auditory hallucinations. One time I went in to visit, he goes, "Tell your grandma hi, honey." Okay, he recognized me, but his mother, who had been dead by 30 years at this time, he was talking to her. She was there, okay? And that happened a lot. All righty. Robin Williams had Lewy bodies dementia. And then there are a dozen other different types of related dementia: Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, all of these lesser-known syndromes. And once again, you can have multiple layers of dementia. Once the brain begins to decide to leave us, it can leave us horribly. All right, these different dementias. And for a long time, when my dad was diagnosed with dementia, in fact, he really wasn't, okay? It's just one day he wasn't there anymore, and the doctor was damned to say he had dementia, okay? It was only through a lot of research on my part that we finally found somebody and finally identified what it was that he had, all right? But that is not the case any longer. Okay, we have tons of different ways to begin to determine if someone has dementia. And these are all biological particulates of them. Urine tests, blood tests, saliva tests, MRIs, CAT scans, things that we didn't have available to us when my dad first came down with this. Again, they are looking for amyloids in the nasal passages now, okay? All right, so these have been developed over the last decade, all righty? And some of them were in experimental, now they're being more widely used. But what we do typically to begin to diagnosis, and this is when we can really get in early and begin to find out what's going on, is to look at behavior. And what we begin to see is, what is normal? How many of you have misplaced your keys? Okay. It's normal until you've done it like 10 times in 2 days and you're going, now, put your keys where they belong. All right, looking at other things, looking for the right word. Sometimes you can't find it, and just as soon as the person walks away, the word goes blump right out of your mouth. All right, you just forgetting something you just read. Okay, now if it's War and Peace, I can get you. Okay, but if you're reading, like BuzzFeed, and you're forgetting, okay, let's talk about it. You go into a room and not remember, why am I here? I know I came in here for something. What was it? All right. And calling somebody you know, I mean, I've got 4 grandkids. Sometimes the wrong name just comes out, you know? All right, when to be concerned. We're concerned when you get lost close to home. You get concerned when we are doing these kinds of things. You get concerned and you're having a hard time, and again, following regular routines, okay? Forgetting to pay your bills for months on time. Now, if you've just suffered a death in your family, okay, guess what? Everyone gets to say blessings on you, and we'll support you. But if this is just happening to you without having some trauma, we need to check further. I don't know how this happens, remembering if you've eaten or not. My stomach would be scorching. Okay, I'd always remember. Personality changes. All right. If you're watching like a Hallmark movie and you can't follow the plot, we are in serious trouble. Okay? How many of you have seen Everywhere Something All at Once? Everywhere All the Time All at Once. All at once. This movie goes forward and backward in time and space, and I'm going, what's happening here? Roll it back. And we rolled it back 3 times. I still didn't get it. All right, but you know, Hallmark Christmas movies, if you can't follow the plot. All right. So, and you're really brain dead. Okay, friends and family begin to express concern. I knew my dad was beginning to have difficulty when we went to the restaurant where he had grown up in this little tiny town of Burlington, and here was the restaurant he'd been in all his life, okay? And in the restaurant, he couldn't remember where the bathroom was. It was like, my mother and I just, whoa. All right. So there are a lot of different cognitive assessments, and if you will get your paper, if you have a handout, the very last page is for you to write. And oftentimes, if you are having memory issues, okay, your doctor will begin to take a look at the medications you are taking, begin to assess your nutrition, look at your sleep patterns, do all these things, but they'll also run a few simple tests. And you have 1 minute, all right, and I will time you. Here I am. Nope, that's 3 minutes. Here's my 1 minute. All right, you have 1 minute, and I'm going to give you a letter, and you have to think of all the words and write them down of words that start with this letter, and the letter is F. You mark it, set, go. And pencils down. All right. A score below 15 is a reason for secondary screening. Okay? All right. Now, this is a cold test. So when you get home, do it again with the letter B, okay? Don't get yourself wound up. Here's the other thing yet. All right, here's another one, is that there is a gender difference in this one. Who do you suppose scores higher? Yeah, verbal fluency. So they actually have a secondary score sheet for men versus women. Okay, now you are going to draw a clock, and I am going to give you 3 minutes to do this. And the clock has to say 10 past 10. On your mark, get set, go. One minute has passed. Two minutes. And put your pencils down. We're having trouble with our... Thank you. Can you bring it down for me? It just seemed to get stuck. Yeah, yeah. There it goes. Thank you. That'll be great. All right, thank you. I don't know why. Okay. As you saw, this is good old 10 past 10. Now, here's the assessment scale that they used for it, okay? And when we did this with my dad, okay, that very last one, the severe one, was the best, and he was having a hard time holding the pencil. So it was like, oh man, I will tell you, at that point, you begin to start thinking of, oh my God, what do we do now? All right, so here is some interesting news though. This is called the Nun Study of Chicago, and in the 80s, they enrolled a whole lot of, and a hush fell this way. All right, the nuns were enrolled in a study, and they liked the nuns because, first of all, they were a group that was easy to get a hold of. All right. Second of all, they didn't smoke or drink excessively. Okay. They had a pretty good diet, and so they agreed at the end of the study that when they passed, they would give their brains to science, okay? This was in the 80s. Okay, so 45 years later, alrighty. And every year they did cognitive assessments, all right? And what they found is that in this group of nuns, very few of them developed dementia, okay? Or outward signs of dementia, very few. I mean, way disproportionate to what we would say in a standard group of little old ladies, should have. But when they died and their brains went to science and they did an autopsy, these ladies, in the most part, had the very same rate of cognitive brain decay as somebody who should have had dementia. They had physical dementia. Their brains were riddled with plaques and taus, but they weren't showing it. They were surpassing their cognitive tests, and they said, oh, what are these, maybe the Lord is giving, but beyond that, they said, no, these ladies were doing things that allowed them not to demonstrate the dementia that their brain had. Most of them were bilingual, okay, which gives you what's called cognitive reserve, which slows the rate of cognitive decline. Most of them had a pretty strong education, okay? They had good diets. They were socially engaged in their community. Many of them worked up until the day they died in some kind of activity that they were in their social order, okay? All these things suggest that you can have a raging case of dementia but not demonstrate it. So how do we extrapolate information from that? Okay, first of all, help your short-term memory, okay? When you think that you can remember something, when you go to the grocery store, I don't need to write that down. Boo. Write it down, okay? Get yourself organized. I mean, I am horrible at this. My kids hate me for this. Get yourself organized. Have a routine. Put your keys where the keys are supposed to go. And he's nodding because this is so true. Okay. There is a place, I call it Aunt Ethel's rule. There is a place for everything. Put it in its place. Aunt Ethel lived to 98 years old by herself without problems, okay? I figured Ethel had some things to say, all right? So organize. I label everything, all right? It's terrible. I'm bad at it, but I do it. For your long-term memory, celebrate yourself. You're the only one who can tell your story. Organize your pictures. Write a narrative. Your kids will want to know, okay? How many of you have watched Finding Your Roots, okay? Write your stories down. Your kids deserve, your grandkids deserve, your great-grandkids deserve to know. I should not be the only person able to tell my grandmother's story, okay? Write it down. Protect your sensory systems. Get that cataract surgery. Get that hearing aid. Dementia, memory loss, and hearing loss are married together. Okay? The greater the hearing loss, the greater the memory loss. Nobody can see those little hearing aids. Get them. Okay? Don't let that happen to yourself. Your brain wants that input, that sensory input. It lives on it. Be careful when you sniff coffee, okay? But retrain your brain to take in your olfactory information. Stop and smell that. Sleep. If you're having trouble with your sleep, you cannot have something go from short-term to long-term memory unless you sleep. Okay? It is during sleep that your little executive fairy in your brain carries that information and embeds it. It can't do it unless you're in a sleep, REM sleep. Okay? If you're having trouble sleeping, see your doctor. There are things you can do to help yourself. You've got to be able to get adequate, good sleep. And I know I'm beginning to sound like Mary Poppins, but feed yourself well, okay? Fruits, vegetables, low-fat proteins, good carbohydrates, water, 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 especially here, okay? You have to eat well. Exercise. This is a biggie, okay? And this, whatever it is, get your heart rate up 2 to 3 times a day. That does not necessarily mean you run around the block. Go upstairs and back, okay? Do your housekeeping, all right? Go to the grocery store, walk around, whatever, all right? Yes, my first major is PE and dance, okay? It matters, all right? If you want something that is what we call the gold standard in Europe, dance, social dancing, line dancing, kick up your feet dancing, Greek dancing, dance, okay? You learn the pattern. It's social. You're following a rhythm. You've got a higher heart rate, okay? You are doing what we call parallel processing with somebody. You're using their mirror neurons to inform yours. You're moving together. Synchronicity, there's power in that, okay? Right now in Europe, they're asking kids to take social dancing in elementary schools to prepare them not to have dementia when they get older, okay? Social interactions, what you are doing right here is golden. We are social critters. We need each other. We live with and for and of each other. It is critical. Keep learning. Always ask questions, challenge, think. Here are some wonderful books about it that are in the library and at Barnes & Noble. I was there day before yesterday, double checking. Here are some websites to which you want to go to check it out. If you have any questions, concerns, here's my email. Tell me that you were in our group and I will respond to you. Okay? Anything I can answer for you, I will do my best. Thank you so much for being with me this morning.
Thank you so much. Do you have time for a few questions?
I sure do.
Okay, I've got one over here, and then I'm going to try to come through. All right, here we go.
Okay, getting back to learning, I know we're supposed to learn quite a few things at once sometimes.
Yes.
So I've been taking improv comedy. Isn't that a good way?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to come up here to the front.
Okay, so this is related to the memory that you mentioned. You mentioned at a young age that you may not remember or that some memories may be reinforced. What about false memories? Because I have memories at the same age that were, that I've reported from others are not accurate to the situation that occurred. From that
Right.
age.
And false memories can happen because our brains are by nature storytellers, okay? And we can take a stem of something that's true that may have happened, and our brains evolve it. Our dreams are memory fragments from the day, okay? And because your brain, as you go to sleep at night, your brain is busy sorting out where this memory needs to go. And at the end of it, there may be a half a dozen pieces that your brain's going, hell, I don't know where you go. And so it weaves this thing together and calls it dream, okay? Your dreams don't have to be grounded in reality, but sometimes dreams are so real that they can be recalled as real memory, okay? That's part of what they think false memory is, all right? That is still an area that they're researching, but this is part of what they think it is. Because, you know, your brain is very happy when all of these little fragments, it weaves together this weird story, and then she takes it basically and goes, okay, it goes into the dream door. But for your brain, it thinks it happened. I have this one dream that is constantly repeating. Somehow under my house is a hidden bunker. I don't know. We will find it one day, won't we, honey? But I said I had that dream again, Skip. There's a house under our house, you know. Don't ask me why, but it's there. Hope that helped a tiny bit. Okay, other questions? Yes.
I had a question about dyslexia
Yes.
because I have it. I had learned different ways to control it.
Yeah.
I mix numbers around, and I used to say biscotti instead of spaghetti.
Yep.
My son had it, and so when he was young, I had him take some classes to help with enunciation and just vowels and verbiage
Right.
and stuff like that.
Right.
My question is, where does it come from? And from what I have heard and read, that it could actually mean you have maybe a higher IQ just because you have so much information, you're spitting it out, like you just don't know how to process all that memory
And dyslexia is, again, multiple types of dyslexia, usually meaning that the wiring in one part of our brain, especially when it comes to reading dyslexias, it could mean, and this again is relatively new, when we are first learning a language, the language is coming in la 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 la, and about 6 months of age, the kid's auditory processing speed develops the way it's supposed to, and all of a sudden, do you want a bottle becomes do you want a bottle? Okay. 2 years from now, that we begin to parse it down, d, oo, you, wa, nt. You break it down. Your brain may have fused some things together during that process. Sometimes it happens when children will have persistent ear infections in the first 3 years of their life, okay? And it makes it harder for the brain to parse out those individual sounds, okay? So again, reading teacher early childhood here, we're still learning lots of information about that. And that's just one type of dyslexia. Yeah, thank you for that question. Yes?
I have the mic.
You have a
you didn't
beautiful
say
voice.
anything. You didn't say anything about games.
Oh,
live in-
yes.
To you.
Yes, I have signed up for a thing called MindPal, and it has like 30 or 40 different games that challenge mathematically, language, visual processing, all the different types of processing. Because at first I was like, I don't know what I think. And then I started playing it, you know, and I sure like winning, all right? But yes, it is actual, and now there's science behind it saying, yeah, it's cognitively stimulating, especially because it keeps changing the games on it. And as you get better, it by itself increases the AI, keeps pushing the game harder, so it makes it more difficult. Okay, here's what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't play solitary for 6 years, you know, old Saul, because there's really no cognitive stimulation there. It's just a repetitive game. The ones that keep changing are the ones that are challenging for senior citizens.
Well, I'll preface this by saying that I was an expert in auditory processing. But
Great.
the games we find, I live in an over 65 community, and the smart people are playing games.
Yes,
Is this cause and effect? In which way? Are the smart people playing games, or are the game players getting smart?
both. The wind goes both ways. Thank you.
I have a question regarding how memories are stored in the brain. What is the actual process, and what would a stored memory look like?
We couldn't, unfortunately, we're not able to go and say, ooh, I want to remember that date. Let's go back into the file system. Let's pull out that thing. It looks, your brain in your neuron system, the only part of your brain that can withdraw that memory is your hippocampus, okay? Somehow your hippocampus is able to go into an invisible filing system and lift it out. Your memories are stored in multiple ways. For example, if I were to remember crocheting a sweater, for example, my brain would remember the colors, the crochet hook, the pattern, the texture. I would have about 1 billion neural connections to one memory. And your brain your hippocampus reaches out and pulls all of those together to create a memory.
But it has to pull them
From many places throughout your entire brain. Your whole brain is a memory machine.
Okay, but what would a stored memory look like?
Like any other neuron, you couldn't just find it. It's part of your neural pathways.
It has to be either mechanical, chemical, or electrical.
And we couldn't parse it out yet. Remember, our abilities is only as good as our technology. Tomorrow, we may be able to go, oh, there's a storage bank. Let's go get it. But at this point, it looks like everything else in your brain.
Okay, so right now, we're not sure just exactly what the process
We
is.
just know it's a whole brain process. Yes, one
Yes.
more.
My question is, we see these ads on TV all the time that say, take this supplement and it'll help your
Oh.
brain. Are those all worthless?
Well, okay, I'm going to answer it this way, especially like something like Prevagen or something like that. Okay, here's what right now the science. The only people who have done research on it is the Prevagen makers themselves. Okay, so they have a good way of saying, well, according to our studies, well, no one's challenged their studies. But here's the other thing I know is that placebo effect is a really hard thing to beat. If you think something is working for you, it will work for you, okay? Right now, doctors are really good at saying, here, this is a sugar pill. It's inert, but you'll feel better, okay? And because he has or she has a little white coat on with a stethoscope.
You're healed.
You are healed. Which doctors are real? I mean, our placebo effect is our brain is powerful, okay? But if you're taking Prevagen and you are not exercising, shame on you, okay? Don't take the Prevagen instead of doing the things we know will work and think that's enough. No such thing. Do good for your whole body. All right, I'm going to stop right now because my voice is getting ready to go. Thank you again.
Okay, as we wrap up, I do know that we've got a few things in the back that need to be cleaned up, so there's plenty of food back there that can't really stay here. One last thing, all this information will be online, so check out the websites Dr. Enz mentioned, and also thank you so much for an excellent, excellent presentation. We greatly appreciate you being with us today. So, there